This is the story of Sandra Good and Mary Bruner, the day they were busted in a Twinkie's truck. It's not a story that's in a book because I don't have a book. I'm only a writer trying to be an author. And they say when you write a book, the book should make you feel like you're there. So on the afternoon, Friday, August the 8th, 1969, Charles Manson supposedly sent Mary Bruner and Sandra Good on a road trip to the Sears store in San Fernando, California. And depending on which version of the tale you believe, the purpose of the trip was either to buy supplies for the upcoming murders. Imagination can go wild here with a rope and knives and lime and all that stuff. Or just to buy some home supplies to make the girls happy at the ranch. Those are the stories. Hello and welcome. If it's your first time here, I'm Michael. This is the back porch. The reason we call it the back porch is because we are so close to everything here. It's right off the back porch. And today we're headed to San Fernando. And we're going to look at these gypsies. That's kind of what they were. They were kind of thieves. They were witches. They were the Manson family. Mary Bruner, Sandra Good, San Fernando. Okay, let's keep in mind now that this little Twinkie's van caper was on the same day of Helter Skelter, the same exact day. The only difference between this crime and the crime with Helter Skelter is, for one, they could be connected. We'll see. Two, this happened at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Somewhere there. Nobody can really tell you the real exact time, but it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon that these girls walked in Sears in San Fernando. These women were evil witches, gypsies, thieves, and they needed no excuse to buy things with stolen credit cards and then fence them later for cash. It's what they did best. It was their profession. The Sears store was located at 1030 Celis Street in San Fernando, California. At about 4 p.m., August the 8th, 1969, Bruner and Good parked in the parking lot and entered the store. After acquiring a few items, they proceeded to check out at a cash register, where cashier Mrs. Ramirez was working as a register. Bruner made the purchase using a stolen credit card in the name of Mary Vitasek, and then later signed a receipt, Mary Vitasek, adding a crime of forgery to the list. In Ed Sanders' version of the story in his book, The Family, he claims it was Sandra Good that was acting a bit finicky in the store, which caused the cashier, Mrs. Ramirez, to check the card numbers against a warning list. A warning list was a list of stolen credit cards. Once someone's card was stolen, they would report it to the bank, and the bank would then report it to the merchants. But it took a while, and sometimes the cards weren't on the list, and the lists were long. They had names and numbers that you had to check this against. But this set up a warning flag, and Mrs. Ramirez went and checked that list. Sanders also points out in the book The Family that Bruner and Good didn't leave the store. They went to a different department to make another purchase. And if they did that, it was easy to see, as you can see from this store. It's not one of the big Sears stores. They should have went to a bigger Sears store where you couldn't see from department to department. Because in the stores back that time in '69, they had floor limits. You could purchase $50 worth of stuff, and then you wouldn't even get suspicion where they wouldn't even look at the list. It was after $50 is where they started looking at the list. So by Good and Bruner going into a different department in the small, tiny Sears store where Mrs. Ramirez could see the whole store, that's what made her suspicious. And it gave her time to look at the list. So thieves knew this rule back then. You could buy $50 in one department, go to another department, buy $50 more, buy $50 in another. You could buy a couple $100 worth of stuff at Sears. You just had to go to different departments. But this was a tiny Sears. And that was exactly what they were proceeding to do. Go from department to department buying stuff. There's the front doors. They would have come out the front doors into the parking lot, got into their bread truck, came out of the parking lot here, made a right-hand turn, and headed towards Brand Boulevard. And down at Brand, they made another right-hand turn. We'll be following that path here in a minute on the great getaway of the Manson family. In 1969, that was a Sears store. And we're in the city of San Fernando. Well, and this time, Ramirez, she certainly became suspicious and found the card numbers on the list. She then alerted the store manager, who attempted to detain Bruner and Good in the store. They rushed past, they two fled out of the store, and the manager was close behind them, which these days they don't do. Managers just let you get away. Not back in 1969, this manager was on their tail. They went out to the getaway car, which was a Twinkie's truck, like we said in the title, and they proceeded to take off. Now it was going to be a chase. The manager ran to his own car and immediately gave chase. Bruner was driving the getaway vehicle, and she turned right out of the parking lot on Celis towards Brand Boulevard. And there at Brand, she turned right. Now she's on Brand, and they're headed down Brand Boulevard. Palm trees in a Twinkie's truck, being chased by the manager of Sears, headed towards Mission Hills. I don't even know if they knew where they were going. Because at one point, Brand will turn into Sepulveda Boulevard. Now they're speeding down Sepulveda Boulevard. And at the corner of Sepulveda Boulevard and Chatsworth Street, there's a gas station. And it's there that they cut in to the gas station. They went around the back of the gas station, and beside this gas station, there's a street. They got out on the street, and they made a left back onto Chatsworth Street. At this point, they were probably confused, because when you're driving around in the valley and you get confused pretty quick, and you lose a direction of which way you're going. And they're headed the wrong direction. Or maybe when they got to the end of that alley there at the gas station, they made a decision, because the guy was still chasing them, that they were not going to go right, because right will take them right to Spawn Ranch. It's like 14 miles, and they're at the ranch. It wasn't that far away, but they were in a 1952 Ford Continental Bakery Hostess Twinkie truck. Couldn't go very fast. This guy was going to follow them right to the ranch. So did they decide there? I don't know. They might have made a wrong turn. They might have decided, we're not taking this guy to the ranch. And they went the other way on Chatsworth Street. Or they might have got confused, because just right down the street is where they crashed this Twinkie truck. They were flying down Chatsworth Street, and it was here that in between this gas station and where they're going to crash at, that Sanders, in his book The Family, claims that Sandra Good tossed stolen credit cards out the window of the van. Although the police versions of the story claim credit cards were found all over the floor of the van, along with many IDs. Sandra Good was actually throwing what they bought from Sears out the window, hoping that the manager would stop the pursuit and just stop and pick it up. Well, it wasn't far down the street. It was approaching the San Diego 405 interchange in Chatsworth Street and Chatsworth Drive. Bruner and Good and white 52 Twinkie van careened out of control, likely confused at this point, because Chatsworth Street made a sharp turn onto Chatsworth Drive here, and they took that turn and crashed into the corner. And they weren't the first ones to crash in the corner, because you can see they put a post here because so many people crash into this corner. But it should be called the Manson Family Corner, because this is the end of the Twinkie pursuit right here at Chatsworth Drive and Chatsworth Street. Sanders claims in his book, The Family, that they crashed near Chatsworth and the San Diego Freeway interchange. And this is pretty correct. I mean, they crashed Chatsworth Drive and Chatsworth Street, but it's well far away from Chatsworth, where they were living at Spawn Ranch. So it can be quite confusing there. But it was right here in the spot where everybody crashes at, especially if you're driving a 52 Twinkie truck. Well, here's where the chase was now over, and the store manager was behind them, blocking them from behind. It was then when the authorities quickly became involved in the incident, when Bruner and Good were taken into custody. Together, from a statement given by the store manager on the fraud and the forgery, then having a host of stolen credit cards and identification cards not belonging to either of the women in the possession. Initially, the pair were carted off to LAPD West Station in Reseda on Van Allen Street. The West Valley Station in Reseda, it didn't have jail facilities, much less for men, let alone women. So they initiated the transfer of these women to Sybil Brand downtown. Sybil Brand Institute for Women. And by the time they would get there, it would be around 10 o'clock at night. According to Susan Adkins' book, shortly after 10 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Sandy. She and Mary had been arrested while shopping with stolen credit cards. Squeaky took the call and relayed the bad news to me. So both Mary Bruner and Sandra Good were booked at Sybil Brand around 10 o'clock, probably around after 12 o'clock, because they weren't really booked until Saturday. That's what Susan Adkins said in her book. And Tex said some interesting stuff in his book as well. So both of them, Mary Bruner and Sandra Good, are both in jail. And Sandra Good was actually released. She was released. They got arrested on Friday, basically Saturday. She was out by Wednesday. Now, Mary Bruner, that was a different story. Because Miss Bruner, she was convicted of using the stolen credit cards. Basically, Sandra Good got off scot-free. How does that always happen with that lady? And she was granted probation last November 5th. So she got out on November the 5th. No Manson family member went and got her out, but Tex says in his book. And Manson says, too, he doesn't leave a brother in jail. He didn't say anything about a sister, but it also plays into this story. Tex said in his book one thing that really is interesting to me. Tex says in his book, as we hurried away, I suddenly remembered, he's talking about hurrying away from the murder scene. As we hurried away, I suddenly remembered that Charlie had told us to go on to other houses until we had $600 to get her out on bail. It was $600. And it happened the afternoon before the murders ever happened. Was it because of her? They say if a person was a good writer, it almost makes you feel like you were there. Hope you felt like you were there. Peace.